When my sister moved in, our neighbor screamed, "Homewrecking whore," every time she took out the trash. Turns out her own husband was secretly texting my sister. She yelled it across the street. My sister moved out crying, so I printed the texts and mailed them to her church. It started with screaming. Not the kind that makes you peek through the blinds and roll your eyes, the kind that freezes your hands mid-motion and makes your stomach drop. Our neighbor, Karen, yeah, her actual name, God help her, was standing in her driveway at 8 o'clock am, still in her robe, hair wild, voice shaking as she screamed across the street at my sister. "You HOMEWRECKING whore. You think you can flirt your way into my husband's bed? Everyone knows what you're doing." My sister, Emma, just stood there holding a trash bag, her face going pale. I was standing at our front window, half a cup of coffee in my hand, trying to process what the hell was happening. The entire neighborhood heard. Curtains were moving, doors cracking open. It was one of those moments that you know instantly something ugly just got unleashed. Emma didn't even argue. She just dropped the trash bag on the curb, ran inside, and slammed her bedroom door. I followed her, knocking softly, but she wouldn't answer. By noon, she'd packed 2 suitcases and said she was leaving. "I can't live here, not with everyone thinking I'm some." She couldn't even finish. I tried to calm her down to tell her people would forget, that Karen was just crazy. But then Emma showed me her phone, her messages, hundreds of them. From Karen's husband, flirty, pushy, gross messages that went back weeks. "You looked good today. Wish I could come over while your sister's at work. Don't tell Karen she's been boring lately." Emma had never replied, not once. Just left him on read, trying to ignore it. But that didn't matter. Because when Karen found the messages, she assumed Emma was the one chasing him. That morning, Karen had found the texts and stormed out without even reading the timestamps or noticing Emma never replied. And now, my sister, the quiet one, the one who helped our neighbors' kids with homework, who baked cookies for everyone at Christmas, was sobbing in her car, leaving town like she'd done something wrong. I stood in the driveway, watching her drive away, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Because even though Emma wanted to move on quietly, I couldn't. Karen had screamed those lies loud enough for the whole block to hear. She'd ruined my sister's reputation, her peace, her confidence, all because her husband couldn't keep his hands off his phone. That night, I opened Emma's messages again, scrolled through every disgusting thing that man sent. Then I started taking screenshots. Every single one. And as I watched the little printer spit out page after page of his words, I knew exactly what I was going to do with them. I wasn't just going to clear Emma's name. I was going to burn theirs to the ground. But not yet. I had to be smart about this. So I put the stack of screenshots in an envelope, sealed it carefully, and wrote one name on the front. Karen's, then another. But not hers. Her mother's. We didn't grow up perfect. We grew up in a split level on the east side of Cleveland, where winters steal your breath and summers smell like fried dough from the county fair. Me and Emma were always glued together. Not in that saccharine way people post about on Facebook, but the kind where you know exactly what the other one will do because you've watched them do it since kindergarten. I'm 2 years older, so I did more of the parenting after Mom left and Dad worked nights driving a truck. Emma learned to be quiet because quiet kept her safe. When she moved in with me 6 months ago, it wasn't romantic or dramatic. Her apartment building got sold to some out-of-town slumlord who jacked rents overnight. Emma works as a veterinary tech, and between student loans and the long commute, she couldn't keep up. I told her she could crash on the spare bedroom for a little while. I thought a little while meant a month, maybe 2. We both know how that goes, those temporary things get sticky. She was fragile after the move, not because she'd lost a place. She'd lost something else, too. Her ex, Tyler, had been emotionally cruel without calling it that. He'd gaslighted her about everything, convinced her that she was keeping secrets, pried into her phone. She left him when she realized she'd spent 2 years explaining why she was allowed to exist. That's the messy truth. Emma moved in to heal from him. She needed safe ground, a place where no one would question her motives for drinking coffee at noon or crying in the shower. Our neighborhood on East 55th had always been the kind where people wave like they actually mean it. Karen and her husband lived across the street for maybe 8 years. Karen, as it turned out, was the kind of person who ran every neighborhood watch meeting, but had zero patience for nuance. She smiled at holiday parties, and then griped about HOA rules in the group chat. Her husband, Mark, worked at the county courthouse, the kind of steady job that makes you invisible in the best way. He was polite, always cut the grass, brought casseroles when someone had a kid. We waved, that's it. Before the screaming, I'd seen Mark chatting with Emma once outside the mailboxes. He was leaning in like he wanted to share a joke, and Emma laughed, the kind of soft laugh she saves for things she actually likes. I remember thinking nothing of it. People flirt, people are lonely. But I did notice the way Mark's phone lit up when Emma bent to pick up a dropped envelope. It didn't feel dangerous, just awkward. Emma was careful with boundaries. She'd told me about a flirty DM once from a coworker, but she blocked him and then forget about it. She wasn't the kind to accept advances. If anything, she avoided conflicts, which is why seeing her run to the car that morning shredded something in me. That was not my sister. So when I found the messages that night, my first thought was protective rage. My second was confusion. The messages were gross and persistent, but the timestamps, they were weird. Some were sent when Emma was at work. Some arrived at 3 in the morning. And then there was one message that made my blood run colder because it wasn't a line. It was a location. A photo attachment with a blurred front door, a porch light on, and a tiny sticky note half visible on the frame. The message said, "I saw you tonight, don't tell Karen." Who was sending that? Why take a photo? Why that note? The screenshot printer whirred in the quiet kitchen as I fed pages out like evidence in a messy, private trial. I stacked them, hands shaking. Emma was gone. Karen had screamed. Mark's words were printed now in black and white. And then I noticed something else, a name in the header of one thread that didn't belong to Mark. It was someone I recognized, and not in a good way. I took another screenshot. There was no way this was going to stay small. The name in the message thread hit me like a punch, Tyler. Emma's ex. I stared at it for a full minute, thinking maybe I was reading it wrong. But it was there, right under one of the flirty messages from Mark. The two men had been messaging in the same thread. That didn't make sense. Mark and Tyler didn't even know each other. Or so I thought. The thread was a mess of screenshots, group messages, and deleted replies. My best guess. Mark had accidentally shared something with Tyler, or Tyler had somehow gotten involved through social media. Either way, that one detail made my skin crawl. It meant there was more going on than just a horny neighbor texting my sister. And sure enough, when I started digging deeper, I found it. Tyler and Mark did know each other. They worked in the same courthouse building, different departments, but close enough to cross paths daily. And based on the way the messages were worded, they'd been talking about Emma. I scrolled further. "You said she was single again," Mark had texted. "Yeah, but she's crazy, trust me," Tyler replied. "Still worth a shot," Mark said. My hands were shaking. They'd been trading information about her, like she was some prize. Like they could both take turns destroying her peace for fun. The timeline clicked into place. Emma moves in with me, right arrow Mark, notices her Mark, starts messaging her. Karen finds the texts. Emma's life blows up, right arrow Tyler, somehow benefits from the fallout. Except how, I didn't know, but I was about to find out. That week after Emma left, the neighborhood buzzed with gossip. I'd catch whispers when I took the trash out. People looked away fast when I made eye contact. The worst was when I overheard Karen's voice at the mailbox, bragging to another neighbor. "Well, maybe next time she'll keep her legs closed before moving into a family neighborhood." That was the moment I knew I wasn't just angry. I was going to ruin her, but before I could act, something strange happened. Mark showed up at my door. He looked tired, nervous. "Hey, is Emma here?" he asked, glancing over my shoulder. I lied. "She's gone." He nodded, rubbed the back of his neck. "Karen's been losing it lately. She went through my phone. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I stared at him, waiting for him to admit it, to apologize. But instead he said, "You should tell Emma to stop talking to Tyler. He's been stirring things up." That sentence didn't make sense. Emma hadn't talked to Tyler since the breakup. And the way he said it, like he knew something, told me there was more he wasn't saying. After he left, I went full detective. I pulled Emma's old phone records, searched her name online, scrolled through public social posts from Tyler and Mark. That's when I found a post from Tyler's burner account, one with only a few followers. It had a photo of a familiar porch, Karen and Mark's, with a caption, "Guess who's about to find out her husband's a cheater? posted the night before Karen's meltdown. It wasn't just coincidence. Tyler wanted Karen to find those texts. He'd made sure she saw them. And if that was true, it meant Emma was just collateral damage in a plan between two bitter, pathetic men, one trying to cheat, the other trying to destroy her for sport. But what neither of them realized was that I had the proof. Every single message, every photo, every timestamp, and I wasn't just going to show Karen. I was going to show everyone. But first, I needed to know how far Tyler and Mark had gone and who exactly had helped them. Because one of the messages had a third name attached, a name I hadn't expected, Karen's. It took me 3 days to figure out what Karen's name was doing in that thread. At first, I thought maybe Mark had added her by accident, but the timestamps told a different story. Karen had been part of the group chat before the meltdown. That didn't make sense. Why would she be part of a thread where her husband was texting another woman? Unless she wanted to see it. The more I dug, the uglier it got. It turned out Karen wasn't some innocent, blindsided wife. She had known about Mark's messages for weeks, and she'd been feeding Tyler screenshots. They'd been talking behind everyone's backs, comparing notes, crafting some kind of narrative. The thread wasn't just dirty flirting anymore. It was strategy. Here's what one of Karen's messages said. If she's dumb enough to keep living there, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of girl she is. And Tyler had replied. She deserves it. She ruined me. Let's ruin her back. Ruined him? Emma left Tyler after she caught him tracking her location and reading her emails. He'd told her she was paranoid, then admitted to installing a monitoring app on her phone for safety. He'd been obsessed with control, and when she finally got free, he couldn't stand it. So he went looking for a way to punish her. Enter Karen, the nosy, lonely neighbor whose husband couldn't stop chasing younger women. Together, they decided to destroy Emma's reputation. They'd let Mark flirt with her, encouraged it even, because it made the story believable. Tyler gave Karen screenshots of Mark's messages, told her he'd caught them texting. Karen confronted Mark, pretended to be outraged, and when she finally exploded that morning, it wasn't shock. It was performance. She'd planned that public humiliation, all to make sure Emma left, and it worked. My sister was gone, crying in a new apartment 2 towns over, terrified of showing her face around anyone who might have seen that scene. When I realized the full scope of it, I felt sick. They'd made her the villain in a story they co-wrote. And they'd gotten away with it because Emma didn't know, and I hadn't put the pieces together in time. But now I had everything. Screenshots, timestamps, even a few voice memos that Tyler had stupidly left on Emma's voicemail when he got drunk. I could prove exactly how deep this went. The question was, how? If I just told Karen what I knew, she'd spin it. If I went to Mark, he'd deny everything. If I told Emma, she'd just hurt more. No, this had to hit like a bomb, so I started planning. Late nights, printer running, sticky notes everywhere, I compiled everything into a neat, chronological report. It read like a court exhibit. Text logs, photo attachments, screenshots of Karen's DMs to Tyler, even her fake Facebook comments under burner accounts. And then, while checking one last thread, I found something that made me stop breathing. A message from Karen to Tyler that said, "She's not the only one we need to worry about. Her sister's been snooping." She meant me. They knew. They knew I was digging. And the next morning, I found my car keyed and a note under the wiper. "Stay out of it, or you'll end up just like her." That was the moment I stopped being scared. They thought they could silence me. They had no idea who they were dealing with. When someone keys your car and leaves a thread under your wiper, there are 2 options. Curl up and let fear run your life, or use that fear like gasoline. I chose gasoline. Not because I'm some vigilante hero, because Emma deserved better than cowardice, and because these people had made my sister leave her own home. First thing I did was secure backups. I copied every screenshot onto 3 separate flash drives and uploaded encrypted copies to a cloud account I'd created under a burner email. I printed extra sets and hid them in places no one would look. The hollow space behind a stack of old cookbooks in the kitchen, inside a shoebox labeled taxes in the attic, and zipped in a folder in my work locker at the vet clinic. Redundancy was boring, but necessary. Next, I mapped the neighborhood. I made a timeline of events and color-coded everything. Who said what, when, where. I circled witnesses. Mrs. Alvarez down the block who'd seen Karen storm out in her robe, the mail carrier who'd noticed Mark's porch light on late nights, the kid who walks their dog and always notices cars. I didn't skip small things. People remember small sensory details, the smell of smoke, the color of a jacket, the cadence of a voice. Those little things build a jury in public opinion. Then I sharpened the dagger. Public humiliation had been their weapon. I was going to return it with facts. I drafted an envelope for every house on our street, about 50 of them. Inside each, I planned to put a short, plain letter addressed personally, not sensational, just the truth laid out plainly, with a link to a PDF that held the evidence. No name-calling, no moralizing. Facts, dates, screenshots, timestamps, the kind of thing you can't shrug off with, "Oh, she must have provoked him." But I knew optics mattered. If I mailed things anonymously or with a dramatic tone, they'd cry victim and the town would rally around them. So I did something more surgical. I created a small neighborhood packet that read like a concerned neighbor's notice. To our neighbors, it would say, "We need to be aware of behavior happening in our community." Then the evidence. Calm, clinical, personal. I also reached out quietly to two people who mattered. One, a neighbor who'd always been friendly with Karen, but who had a history of valuing honesty. Two, the editor of the local community Facebook page that lists lost dogs and bake sales. People actually read that feed. I didn't want viral, I wanted local, undeniable. At night I practiced my lines. If confronted, I'd stay factual. If threatened, I'd call the cops and document everything. I bought a dash cam and set it to record in the driveway. I changed the contact info on my burner email to forward copies to a separate address, so nothing could be lost. This was small claim, neighborhood-level war, and I intended to win it without letting emotions cheapen the strategy. There was one more piece: leverage. People with things to hide are often careful about their reputations. I found out Mark had been up for a promotion at the courthouse, a promotion that required a clean background and proof of good character. That made me smile coldly. Careers are fragile things. A scandal in a local paper would do what a shouting match across the street didn't. It would stain their records. So I assembled everything into a final packet. A printed dossier, copies of the messages, a one-page timeline, and 3 short statements from witnesses I'd convinced to corroborate the timeline, nothing dramatic, just, "I heard her screamed at. I saw him leave late at night. I saw the porch light." Then I did something I didn't tell anyone about. I sent the same packet, with a polite cover letter, to the courthouse HR office and to the county ethics board. I wanted an institution to see the facts before the rumor mill could spin them. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the last envelope in my hand, the one addressed to Karen's mother, the woman who used to bake pies at church and who'd been publicly kind to Emma before the meltdown. I folded the letter, sealed it, and felt the weight of what I was about to do. It wasn't revenge for entertainment. It was a surgical unmasking. I was about to hit send on the email that would distribute the evidence to the neighborhood listserv when my phone buzzed. It was a photo message, just a single image. I opened it. It was a screenshot of my own backyard camera feed, me at my kitchen table with the dossier spread out. Timestamp, 2 hours ago. The sender was an unknown number. The caption read, "We warned you, last chance." For the first time since this started, I realized they weren't only cruel, they were watching me. I froze staring at the photo, the grainy night vision still of me in my own kitchen. It wasn't from my dash cam or my doorbell feed. The angle was wrong. It was from inside the house. My stomach dropped. Someone had been in my house. I looked around the kitchen, nothing looked disturbed, but suddenly everything felt wrong. The camera was nowhere visible, but whoever sent that photo had either broken in or gotten access to my Wi-Fi cameras somehow. My hands shook as I unplugged every device I could find, smart plugs, Alexa, even my router. The silence afterward felt like holding my breath underwater. Then I went to the police. I showed them the note, the keyed car, the threats, the photo. The officer took my report, nodding, clearly skeptical. "Any idea who might have done this?" "Yeah," I said, "Karen or her husband. Or her friend Tyler." He gave me that polite, condescending look cops give when they think you're overreacting to neighbor drama. "We'll file it," he said. "Just keep your doors locked." By the time I got home, I was shaking with fury. Keep your doors locked? That's what you tell someone when you plan to do nothing. I decided right then I wasn't waiting for help. That night, I left my living room lights off and sat in the dark by the window, watching the street. Around 11:30 p.m., Mark's car pulled into their driveway. 10 minutes later, Karen's silhouette crossed their kitchen window, phone in hand. Then a second shadow appeared, taller, not Mark. It was Tyler. He was in their house. That's when it all clicked. The messages, the alliance, the obsession. Karen and Tyler weren't just working together to ruin Emma. They were sleeping together. And if that was true, it changed everything. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was tactical. Tyler had used Karen's marriage as leverage, and Karen had used Tyler's bitterness as fuel. Together, they'd set up Emma as the scapegoat while hiding their own affair behind the chaos. I felt sick and exhilarated all at once. If that photo of my kitchen was their warning, it meant they were scared. It meant my digging was working, so I decided to make their paranoia eat them alive. I created a new email account and used an anonymous sender tool. Then I drafted 3 short, cryptic messages and sent them to each of them, Karen, Mark, and Tyler. Each message contained one sentence. The truth always finds its way home. No name, no context. Then I attached one image, a blurry photo of the same dossier sitting on my table, but this time I had written in black Sharpie across the front. Confirmed BY Police. I hadn't confirmed anything, but they didn't need to know that. Within an hour, I saw Karen pacing in her living room. She looked frantic. Mark came in, yelling. I could hear muffled shouting even from across the street. A few minutes later, a car door slammed. Mark drove off fast, tires screeching. The next morning, their blinds stayed shut. Karen didn't come out to get the mail. Mark didn't leave for work. By nightfall, I saw 2 cop cars outside their house. I didn't know what had happened, but I didn't move from the window. At 10:07 p.m., a text popped up on my phone from an unknown number. You think you won? You don't even know what you started. Attached was another photo. This one wasn't of me, it was of Emma. Standing outside her new apartment, looking over her shoulder like someone had taken it from across the street. My blood ran cold. The fight wasn't just here anymore. They'd found her. I called Emma the second I saw that picture. She answered on the second ring, voice shaking. Why are you calling so late? Where are you right now? I asked. In my apartment. Why? I swallowed hard. Lock the door. Now, when I told her what I'd received, the photo, the caption, she went silent for a long time. Then in this small voice she said, He's been here. I felt my heart stop. Who? Tyler, she whispered. A few days ago, I saw his car outside the building. I thought I was imagining it, but he's been leaving notes on my windshield. Blank pieces of paper, just watching. That was when it clicked. This wasn't just obsession. It was control. Tyler had never gotten over losing that power over her. He didn't want her back, he just wanted to prove he could still reach her. He'd teamed up with Karen because he found the perfect partner in someone equally bitter, equally manipulative, equally addicted to chaos. But there was something darker underneath all of it. I started rereading every message between them, every screenshot. There were things I'd skimmed over before, strange lines that didn't make sense until now. Like one from Tyler. She'll learn that running away doesn't mean she's free. And Karen had replied, as long as she's scared, we win. Those words made my skin crawl. This wasn't just revenge. This was recreation. They got off on it. I don't mean sexually, I mean emotionally. It was like the two of them fed off the drama, the pain. They'd built a little world together made entirely of control and humiliation. Emma was just their canvas. And when I got involved, I became their new target, a replacement when their toy left town. But the horrifying part came later, when I found one more thing. One night, while scrolling through the data backup I'd made, I opened a hidden folder that hadn't shown up before. It was from one of Emma's old cloud syncs. Inside were dozens of screenshots from months before she even moved in with me. Messages from Tyler, photos of her house, a few grainy pictures of her sleeping, taken through her window. He'd been watching her for months before they broke up. And one of the photos had a reflection in the glass, someone holding the camera. A woman's reflection. It was Karen. My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe for a second. This wasn't some random alliance born of gossip. They'd known each other before the breakup. Tyler hadn't just found a bitter neighbor, he'd already been in contact with her. And then it all came together like a sick puzzle. Karen's husband worked with Tyler. Tyler had met her at one of those courthouse Christmas parties, small talk over drinks, bonding over their unhappy relationships. Tyler told Karen about Emma, about how she'd betrayed him by leaving. Karen told him about Mark's flirting. They decided to make Emma the villain in both their stories. They wanted someone to blame, someone to punish. And when Emma moved into my house across the street, it was perfect. Their fantasy villain had landed right in front of them, so they baited Mark. They provoked the fight, and they made sure Emma was humiliated so completely she'd disappear quietly. And then they moved on to me. That was their pattern. They didn't just ruin lives, they fed on the fallout. They weren't just cruel, they were calculated, the kind of people who destroy others just to feel alive for a few minutes. But what they didn't realize was that their little game had finally hit the end of the board, because they had left a trail, and I had every single piece of it. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection, Karen's smirk caught in the window of my sister's old bedroom. I stopped feeling scared. Fear was what they wanted, so I turned it into precision. First, I called Emma and told her exactly what I was about to do. She begged me not to. She said, "I just want it to stop." I told her it would, permanently. I started with documentation. I filed an official police report with everything. The photo of Emma, the keyed car, the text threats, the evidence of stalking. But instead of waiting for them to care, I attached the whole thing to 3 more emails. One to the county courthouse HR department, one to the local newspaper, and one to a small true crime reporter who lived 2 streets over and owed me a favor for helping her rescue a stray dog last winter. I gave them everything. The timeline, the screenshots, the proof of their affair, the stalking photos. I didn't have to say much, the evidence spoke for itself. Then I delivered the neighborhood envelopes. One by one, before dawn, slipping each into a mailbox or under a mat. Every packet included a letter that said, "This is not gossip. This is documentation of harassment and stalking that drove an innocent woman from her home. Please read and decide who the real danger on our street is." No threats, no embellishment, just truth in print. By noon, the first explosion went off, figuratively. The Facebook community page lit up with posts. "Has anyone else seen this? Is this real? This is sick." By 2 p.m., the courthouse HR office had suspended Mark pending investigation. By 4 p.m., a police car was parked outside Karen's house again. This time they didn't just talk, they escorted her out. The official story was questioning, but I knew better. They'd found what they needed. The photo surveillance, the connection to Tyler, the threatening messages, all of it was enough to open a stalking investigation. That night, I drove to Emma's apartment. When she opened the door, she looked like she hadn't breathed properly in weeks. I handed her a copy of the newspaper that had already started circulating online. Headline: Local court employee and neighbor under investigation for SDALKING harassment. Her name wasn't mentioned. Not once, just theirs. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she started crying, not those panicked, helpless tears from before. These were different. Relief, maybe, release. I didn't cry, I just felt empty. Like I'd been holding a burning coal in my hand for months and finally dropped it. Over the next week, the fallout spread like wildfire. Mark's job, gone. Karen's reputation, ashes. Their house went up for sale 2 months later. Tyler, arrested, he'd violated a restraining order by showing up near Emma's workplace. He was charged with stalking and harassment. The police called me a key witness. I called it closure. The day the for sale sign came down across the street, I stood in the driveway with my coffee, watching the moving truck pull away. For the first time in months, the air felt clean. Emma moved back in the next week. She brought new curtains, thick ones. I installed new cameras inside and out, this time with local storage, no Wi-Fi. We painted the kitchen. Tried to pretend normal could grow back. It's been 6 months since. Karen and Tyler both took plea deals. No jail time, but their names are public record now. People whisper about them the way they used to whisper about Emma. Sometimes I still think about that morning, Karen screaming, the neighborhood watching, Emma running inside. I think about how fragile truth is when someone decides to weaponize lies. But I also think about the sound the printer made that first night, page after page of evidence spitting out. That sound was the start of the end for them. They wanted to ruin my sister's name. Instead, I made sure they could never say theirs in this town again. And every time I see a moving truck or hear someone gossip across the fence, I just sip my coffee and smile. Because revenge doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's printed on plain white paper, and sometimes it gets delivered first class.